Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar Explained video. This one's going to be all about how the connection to the past avatars was lost, with Korra of course, and then also, primarily, is there a way to get them back? So, before we get into the explanation, I want to give, I suppose, my full opinion on this as just a plot point that happened over the course of Korra. So most of you guys know, follow the channel, know that I really like Book 2 a lot. And that actually includes this plot point of the past lives going away. As much as I love these kind of unique mechanics of the Avatar world, including the fact that an Avatar can kind of connect and talk to their past lives, within the context of what they did here, I thought it was really well done and laid the groundwork for what they were able to do, I suppose, with Korra and the mentors that she had in later books. Now, the reason for that, of course, is because within Book 2, they play off the angle of Korra being able to do this on her own, without even needing to have the Avatar aspect of herself do it. She's able to do it on her own by powering up her own spirit, and in the same way of referencing it back to Wan, that in a way, the person that Wan was worthy to be the Avatar, and he then eventually got the power to be able to actually make change. The point is that the person who the Avatar is kind of unique and powerful just on their own, and that Raava is just this ability to have kind of power kind of added on to that. And in that sense, I liked what they did, in that they created this permanent way to get rid of the Avatar kind of part of Korra. And as much as they later had her refuse with Raava, I like that there was this lasting change to something so noticeable happening, something so big happening, that Korra, Raava was ripped out of Korra and destroyed. I would struggle with that if they just reversed that, if it was just, okay, they refused again, which makes sense because harmonic convergence was on and that's when the Avatar first came into being. That makes complete sense, but Raava is destroyed along the way, so something has to happen there, and the loss of the past lives, the loss of, I suppose, the memory of the Avatar in a way for that entire run is what's lost in the process. Most of what the Avatar is still left there at the end, it's just the kind of the connection to those past lives that's gone. So, it's a frustrating thing, but I appreciate the writing aspect of this so much that they just committed to and didn't really try within the body of the show Korra to ever try and come up with a solution to this. As far as Korra was concerned, it was just as far as I'm aware right now, that link is gone and it's just me. I am the new start of an Avatar cycle, and that's good because it makes Korra feel very important, and it also, what it did for Book 3 and 4 was that it allowed Tenzin to be even more of a mentor to Korra, in that Tenzin's mentorship, his care for Korra, is kind of what really allows a lot of the Book 2 finale to happen. But then in Book 3, again, he is a big advisor to her. He helps her, she helps him as well. But then when there's a really tough situation, an Avatar situation, with the past lives not there to go to, who does she go to? She goes to Zuko. And this is how they kind of opened the door to a lot of the original cast coming back in the mentor role. Given that they didn't want to overuse those characters, it made sense, of course, that Katara would have a pretty big role just from the get-go in Korra's life, but, Toph and Zuko maybe not as much. So here's an obvious reason for Zuko to kind of come in and help Korra in a big situation in Book 3. And then in Book 4, here's a great scenario for Toph to come in and really help Korra with what she needs to do. So I think for a lot of plot reasons, it actually ended up working out quite well. I understand the frustration of that it is this really notable plot point of yeah, it means that with Korra, sure, we're not going to get to see her talk to Aang, her talk to Roku, her talk to Kyoshi, and all those type of things. And I get it. I get the frustration that's there because of that. It's this big thing that was done, but this, I think a lot of it comes back to a lot of the same people who have the same critique were also the same people who heavily criticized Korra Book 1 for just, Aang just gives her bending back. Why was there no journey? Why was there no lingering stakes? Why was it so simple? yet the same people are asking for the simple solution in this scenario. And I don't really get that. And for me, I've never been one who's wanted the Korra go on the journey to master the four elements when she already knows them, or anything like that. So I was perfectly fine with them going for the idea of, if you link book 1 and 2 together, in the first case, it's showing the benefits of the Avatar state. When she finally connects to the Avatar state and Raba's and the past lives fully, they can help her in situations like that. Her bending was blocked by Amon, and it's just, here's this power you previously didn't have access to, but now you do, and we can help you, we can advise you, and do things like this for you. And then they get into one of the craziest situations in the world, and the past lives aren't there for her, and it causes Korra to step up in a very big way, in a big character way. So character-wise and stuff like that, I don't really have much of a problem with it. I do often think about, is there a way to get them back, and so on, and that's where we'll get into the explanation now about how did this happen in the first place, and then is there a way to get it back in. One final thing before we get into it is just that I'll say, this is much more of a kind of theory type video, in that I don't feel there's as much explaining here as there really is kind of just prompting the question of like, here's what we know, here's my vague interpretation of it, but there's tons of interpretations available. So we'll start off with this. First, we need to bring up how much we know about the connection of the Avatar to Raava, since this is the connection that was broken, and even when restored, it still leaves the past lives unconnected. This is just the scenario that happened to lead to the problem that we want to solve. And so we need to learn about what exactly is the connection of Raava and the Avatar. We know they fused, but like, what are the details of it, and where does that information come from? So from Korra directly, there's a few quotes about it. Korra says, "When Vaatu destroyed Raava, he destroyed my connection to the past avatars too." Later on she says, "The cycle is over on the last avatar. I'm not connected to her spirit anymore." Raava says, "Harmonic convergence is nearly over. We must return to the spirit world so we can fuse once again." And then Tenzin also says, "Are you also reconnected with your past lives after they refuse again?" And Korra says, "No, I think that link is gone forever." That's the line that I think a lot of people have that reaction to, of just like, why wasn't it immediately resolved? And it's showing that Korra is going to have to go on alone, that there was results of this crazy conflict that happened. Maybe wondering why I include that Raava quote there, and that is just to get across the idea that even though Raava was destroyed and then reborn again within Vaatu, that she still like remembers enough that she knows that it is a good thing that she needs to fuse with the current avatar. So it's not this thing where when Raava is destroyed, she just loses flat out all of her memory and is kind of like reset again. What's lost, as we'll get into, is just this kind of energy, this kind of spirit connection to the previous reincarnations of Wan. So, that's just some of the talk about it in terms of confirming the connection to the past lives is what's destroyed, and just direct terminology, the link is gone, and so on. So visually, here's what we see. Raava obviously getting taken out of Korra, and then hit by Unalaq and his waterbending, and it obviously makes Raava smaller and smaller until eventually she is destroyed, and along the way we see the different past lives begin to kind of fade away. They get destroyed in the process along with this. The connection to them all the way down, all the way back to the first avatar, Wan, goes away as Raava is destroyed. And so that is the connection that's lost. Next, we'll tackle the avatar state. So this is all Roku's quotes here. "The avatar state is a defense mechanism designed to empower you with the skills and knowledge of all the past avatars. The glow is the combination of all your past lives, focusing their energy through your body. If you are killed in the avatar state, the reincarnation cycle will be broken and the avatar will cease to exist." So what is the avatar state? What is the power that is granted to the avatar because of this kind of inherent connection? So it gives you the skills and the knowledge of all the past avatars, and then specifically the glow is basically all that connection, that knowledge, their energy being channeled through the body of the avatar. That's what makes the avatar state so powerful, and why there's all this extra stuff. It's the cosmic energy sort of being the power source, and then Basically, it's the skills, knowledge, and energy of this connection to the past lives channeled through the avatar state, and that's why there's such crazy abilities in the avatar state that typically an avatar can't do unless they're using the avatar state. So obviously in the avatar state, we know that the reason the cycle ends is because it's effectively the idea that when you're in the avatar state, you are in a way putting Raava at risk. Usually the human is just killed, and that's fine. Raava can just be reborn within the next human because for the most part, she doesn't take the hit when the human does. But in the avatar state, the idea is that if the human gets hit, Raava gets hit as well. And if the human gets killed, the idea is that Raava is quote unquote destroyed. But we know that the effect that has is just that she's reborn within Vaatu. But her connection, the fusion to Juan's reincarnation cycle, is gone the second she's actually destroyed in that way. So that's what actually ends the reincarnation cycle. But interestingly, it is the connection to the reincarnation cycle. And this is where it gets very vague in terms of terminology and so on. But that's just, I suppose, what we're talking about here. What is lost in this is that, and then plus the avatar's ability to talk with their past lives. So we'll move on. So this confirms that the connection to the past lives is facilitated through Raava. The current avatar does not inherently have a connection to their past lives without Raava. And of course this is minus some details like the avatar understanding that the avatar relics and items like Juan's teapot belong to them. And obviously each reincarnation of Juan having all 4 elements. But without Raava, it does not seem like avatars can connect to their past lives. So this is just getting across the idea that okay, as much as it is this fusion thing, it is not like this inherent thing where it's like 2 become 1. It is more of like 2 are suddenly linked in some way. And that's why there is a sort of separate aspect to this. Raava and the human are separate in a way, but they are linked sort of energetically rather than being completely like fused and mashed together. There are still 2 spirits within the avatar, the human itself and then Raava. So this is kind of getting across that one of Raava's powers in terms of the avatar whole thing is that she allows the current reincarnation of Juan to have this inherent connection and in a way remember and talk to their previous lives. And this is where we start to get into the idea of like, is it just a thing in Avatar that the life-death cycle is reincarnation? Is it just Juan that's a special one that Raava allowed to happen, or does this happen with everyone? And if that is the case, that means that there's something special about the Avatar because Raava and the whole 4 elements thing allows this to basically be the only known reincarnation cycle, so that people know directly this person becomes this person when they die and so on, because Raava is connected to that cycle. The spirit of Juan that kind of continues to be reborn, she's connected to that, and that's why you can locate specifically the next avatar, and that's why I mentioned like the avatar relics there, as well as Juan's teapot, in that the only real inherent things that seem to transfer over apart from Raava to just the person that is the avatar is that they remember that these relics that they've never seen before belong to them. And it's the same with Juan's teapot, that they understand that that is their property despite it clearly being someone else who initially owned that in the first place. So there's some interesting stuff here, but the point here is just that the ability to, I suppose, like summon Roku for Aang to talk to is primarily a Raava kind of power rather than like I suppose the idea of say Iroh. Take Iroh for example. Is he reincarnated from someone else? Probably, if you're going to take that's how the life-death cycle works. There is no way for him to link to his previous life. Raava allows that to happen because her connection is to the cycle of like the spirit of Juan, basically. So that's kind of the point to make here. Raava is what allows a lot of these special things that it makes up the Avatar allows to happen. So if you're wondering about the Avatar relics, we see them in the storm. When Aang is told that he's the Avatar, he recognizes them as his toys, even though he's never seen them before. So that's an important thing to kind of just be aware of what I'm talking about. And then similarly, Korra in the spirit world immediately recognizes this pot before Iroh ever points out the significance of this pot. So that's an interesting one. Now, I suppose in that case, like, she knows that Wan had it because I suppose she saw that vision, but it doesn't seem like it's just like, oh, I remember that teapot because Wan had it. It's like this inherent thing within her where she's suddenly like, wait, that's my teapot. And I don't think it's just because, oh, I saw that with Wan. It's the Avatar thing of she understands within her that belongs to her. So, for me, the key to any sort of solution is understanding the details of the spirits of the past lives. In the end, reconnecting with these is the answer to restoring the connection to the past lives. So let's look at some examples here of how we get to see the spirits of the past lives within the shows. So, one of the first examples here that we have is obviously Fang. This is the Spirit World episode. This is where the whole Spirit World idea is really brought up. So we see Fang out of nowhere appear, and this is a sort of an interesting side point, but I think it's important in the grand scheme of all of this that, like, Fang, the spirit of Fang, brings Aang and shows him to where he can eventually connect with the spirit of Roku. Now, you may ask the question of, like, how is it that Fang is also a spirit when he is, like, just Roku's animal? And obviously there's the whole animal guide thing, which isn't explored in a great deal, but, like, the idea appears to be that, you know, in a way, the spirit of this animal is kind of like bonded to the spirit of their owner because it is this inherent connection going all the way back to, like, Wan and the cat deer Mula. And that there is always, like, a animal that the Avatar will have a great connection to, and there's some sort of a spiritual connection, which means that in the same way that the spirit of the previous Avatars seems to sort of be allowed to kind of persist, the spirit of that animal also persists, which sort of helps to explain this. Then when Aang actually meets Roku and he has to connect to him, obviously through the temple and, like, the solstice and stuff like that, they meet here, and it seems to be the first time we see the spirit world. Then immediately afterwards, it's this unique situation where Roku actually, like, channels himself through Aang's body in some way. The next time I think we see it, I'm not going through every single situation, but, like, one of the next times we see him is that he just randomly appears before Zhong to kind of almost frighten and convince Zhong into training Aang. And he just, again, appears out of nowhere. This time, Aang isn't even really aware that that's happened. So that's another kind of, like, how exactly did that come about? Then obviously in the book 1 finale, when Aang's looking for Ko to find where the moon and ocean spirit are, he also sees Roku there as well. Then there's also the Kyoshi situation, where in a similar way, Kyoshi channels herself through Aang. Then in the actual finale of the show, the Old Masters, we see this kind of different way of doing it, where Aang, just on the Lion Turtle, just sits down and meditates, and the direct spirit of Roku just, like, flat out appears before him, and he does this with all of the other avatars as well. So it's all these kind of different ways that it's kind of done. And I suppose that the ultimate question through all of this comes down to this. If the spirits are separate to Raava, then it seems likely that they could be found and the past lives restored fully. If the spirits are, if the past life spirits are a thing because of Raava, then it seems likely that fully restoring the Avatar is not possible, since this connection / energy was lost when Raava was destroyed. So if the spirits of the past avatars are still out there somewhere, then perhaps they could be found in the spirit world and some of those connections restored, similar to what Aang does in Escape from the Spirit World. So this is all leading up to this point of, this is probably our most obvious way that, like, could be done. So in between book 2 and 3, obviously at the end of book 2, Aang is hit with the lightning and killed. He's revived by Katara, but his avatar spirit is damaged. It's this unique situation where he's not killed fully in the avatar state, but it's close enough to where Raava's damaged. And so what he has to do here in between book 2 and 3 to stop the cycle from ending for good is this. Yue tells him, your avatar spirit has been injured. Obviously we now know avatar spirit basically just means Raava. If you don't act fast, you will lose your connection to the past lives. and the avatar cycle will end. You must find your previous 4 past lives and reconnect with them. And then over the course of this story, he does that. He meets Roku, then he meets Kyoshi, then he meets Kuruk, then he meets Yang Chen. Now, I'm not showing you any of that stuff because inherently all he does is meet with those characters. They kind of show him a moment from their past. And there's no like energy type thing that seems to happen. It's just he's met them, so he's fulfilled this kind of thing of actually meeting, connecting with them. But it is interesting that like his connection is damaged, but he's still able to find the past lives in the spirit world. So again, the question comes back to, based on all of those examples, can we say for sure that the spirits of the past lives only exist because Raava allows that to happen, and she sort of like projects all of the past lives as spirits when Aang is in a spiritual situation? Or just is it a thing where completely separate to Raava, all of the spirits of the past avatars just kind of exist somewhere in the spirit world and are able to be found? That is, I suppose, the ultimate key question to this that I personally can't really answer fully, because there's just not enough details on, I think, a lot of the situations. Now, I think enough of them would sort of point to it sort of being an inherent thing within the Avatar, in that, especially that last example of like during the Old Masters, the spirit of the Avatar that Aang wants to talk to kind of comes out of himself. And similarly, in other situations, it's the Avatar being sort of channeled through Aang. And so the only kind of, I think, counterpoint really is the thing with Fang. And like Fang is a separate spirit, and you know, how is Roku able to, you know, also have a spirit there? So it's a weird situation, and I don't really know where to kind of stand down on it. I think there's enough of them point towards it being inherent to Raava, so I'd more kind of lean towards the that potentially it might not be possible. But I think it's one of those things where it's vague enough to where I would be perfectly fine if they just use this as the example. That Korra can, if she really gets really spiritual, searches every aspect of the spirit world, that she could find like the spirit of Aang in there, the spirit of Roku, and go back and keep doing that. And I think the idea here should probably be that it is this longer form thing, that it shouldn't be a case of she just has to connect to 4 like Aang did when Raava was injured. This should probably be a case of she has to fully get it back, reconnect with the spirit of every avatar. And so it is this thing that goes beyond her life, that Korra won't be able to fulfill this, but she can start the process. She can, you know, reconnect with like Aang, Roku, all the way up to like Yang Chen, and then the avatar after Korra can maybe continue that process and go into like, you know, Avatar Jafar and all those other avatars that we don't really know anything about. And finally, when one of these avatars in the future, off the Korra kind of cycle of the avatar, finally reconnects with Wan, then it's fully back. I could see that happening, but it comes down to ultimately how you interpret the whole, why are there spirits of the avatar? We know humans can separate their spirit from their body, but why is it that all of the past lives of the avatar can seemingly be separate, even though it's inherently the spirit of like the same person? And at that point you start to ask yourself the question of like, in that case, is it just like Raava projecting basically the memories and basically sort of her forming the personality of that avatar to project it forward? Or is it actually the spirit of that character still alive? And it gets confusing because you're suddenly more talking about the life-death cycle thing rather than this specific scenario. But again, that's ultimately the question I would ask everyone watching this video is, what way do you interpret that? Do you interpret it as that Raava allows those spirits to exist, or are they separate and they can be got back and attached to kind of Raava to basically restore to the avatar to what it once was? Because if you connect with the spirits, you're suddenly getting the energy, the link, the skills, the knowledge back. And you know, here's the other theory though on this as well that's kind of important. The other idea would be to use the Tree of Time. We know it's able to recall all of the memories, all of the memories of the person who connects with it. Tenzin says, the Tree of Time remembers all. Korra is able to remember the memories lost after she was attacked by a dark spirit because of the tree. But what if Rava used the tree? This could get the knowledge of the past lives back, but perhaps not the skills and energy of the past lives. Not the ability of the Avatar to communicate with the past lives or anything like that. But obviously this would assume that Rava has actually lost her memories of the past lives along with the connection. She could remember everything without needing the tree, depending on how her memory works. And that's why I kind of mentioned that point back with the Rava quote towards the start of the video of, like, if she knew that she needed to fuse with Korra again, she clearly remembers Korra and at least the immediate kind of situation going on. So does she remember basically her entire history, or just until she was destroyed? Either way, I think it would be this interesting point of, like, Korra brings Rava to the Tree of Time and has kind of Rava in a way kind of channel herself in a way through through the Avatar, so that Rava remembers all of her stuff very clearly. And, you know, in that case, just to confirm that this is what we're talking about here, here's Korra entering the Tree of Time, and you can see it showing her all of her memories, including some of the stuff that she'd forgotten. So that's just visually what could happen. And imagine Rava did that. It realistically, like, we don't have any confirmation it doesn't remember what Rava remembers. If it remembers what Korra does, why wouldn't it remember what Rava does? And her memories would include basically every experience every Avatar has ever had. So that is a large part of what is missing currently, with Korra only being the only Avatar basically in this current cycle. So in conclusion, I suppose in the end, I think that there is a way for Korra or a future Avatar to bring back the past lives fully. At the moment, Korra can still communicate with Rava, and Rava, by virtue of having witnessed the lives of every Avatar, can supply at least some wisdom to Korra, be that her own opinion or what she feels a certain Avatar would say in a certain situation. In that, you know, whether she actually communicated with that Avatar enough or remained silent as the fusion in a specific Avatar's case, in that, like, it's kind of implied that, like, Aang never met or spoke to Rava specifically, but she was there. She is still conscious, I suppose, to a degree across everything, so she would, like, remember everything that's happened, and I suppose know Aang enough to be able to say, like, in my opinion, Aang would handle this way because of this, and this. As for the spiritual connection, some things suggest it could be possible to reconnect to the spirits of the past lives, others lean towards it not being possible, and that's what I tackled sort of earlier on. It's a very technical thing that's going on here, and I don't think there's ultimately any real clear-cut answer, but through stuff like the Tree of Time, and then through the whole spirit reconnection thing based on Escape from the Spirit World, I think there's at least a hope for this being restored. As I said, my idea would be more along the lines of, I think it should be a kind of a thing that the Avatars really need to work to make happen. That it will take the course of multiple Avatars' lives to make it happen, and that is reconnecting in the spirit world to every single Avatar along the way. And then gradually up until Wan actually gets reconnected, and then the Avatar is fully restored back to what it was. But again, I suppose the point is ultimately, if you did that, would you not be taking away from, I suppose, so much of what they were trying to do in Book 2? I think if you give it enough time, then absolutely you can do that. But as it is right now, with no clear-cut example or reason for them going back to it, I'm fine with them, like, it being what it was, the plot being what it was, and us having to accept that, at least for now, Korra is the start of a new cycle, but that theoretically Rava, as well as what Korra knew about the past lives, is still there. And then it gives sort of more of a reason for Korra to use Tenzin, Zuko, Toph, Katara to be her advisors when the past lives aren't actually there. So, and then the other point in all of this as well is that we're still getting Aang's story at the same time as we're going forward in the universe with Korra. We will get more information on the past lives. Like, we're getting 2 Kyoshi novels. One's out in a couple of months, and the other one I assume will be the same time next year. They're covering more ground on this sort of stuff, and as long as the Avatar comics continue, we can get Aang talking to his past lives, and that's everything except Korra, obviously. Obviously, it means we're missing out on Korra getting to talk to Aang. That's like the key dynamic that's kind of missing. But we saw at least a little bit of that. And while, of course, it's unfortunate, I respect them making such a big decision to really change something big about the universe and leaving this kind of... that there were results, that there were complications that happened because of consequences is the word I was looking for there, for what happened. That they didn't just do the book one reversal thing where it just is immediately solved. There were lingering results even now that this is the case. So I think I've went through this as kind of detailed as possible. This is definitely one where I want to see what other people think about it, because it is a often brought up topic. I don't really see too many people actually go into the discussion of like how it could happen. It's more people just bringing up like the idea of, is there a way? But, you know, that's the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.